Hello, I'm Casey and today is Friday and that means it's Fresh Pasta Friday. Last week I made an egg dough pasta and this week I decided I wanted to make a semolina dough pasta. I am just going to be using the ingredients semolina as well as some warm water, and then that is going to make our dough, and then I will make a fun pasta shape called Lorighittas, which is a pasta that hails from Sardinia. It's a fun pasta shape, it's unique, it's a little different than other ones, so it's fun to make as well as eat. With semolina flour, it is a lot coarser than your typical flour, and with any pasta recipe I always recommend measuring out your ingredients. We're going to do 500 grams of semolina, which serves 5 people because it's 100 grams of flour per person, and then we're going to do 50% of that as a warm liquid, so 250 grams of warm water. We're going to start with 500 grams of semolina. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is definitely a much more coarser grain, but it will be pretty remarkable once we add the warm water and start kneading it. It's gonna feel so soft and supple, just like any other kind of pasta dough. And now we'll get 250 grams of water, so I'm going to tear out my measuring cup before I fill it with water. Okay, 248, we'll settle with that. You definitely want to make your pasta on a wooden surface. That is the best surface to mix your dough on, knead it on. It's porous enough to where it doesn't get all tacky to the surface and stick to it, and it comes off really nice and cleanly. So I always prefer and recommend making your pasta on a wooden surface, and if you have the room, like also drying it on that wooden surface really helps out too. Okay, so dumping this out, making a little well. Pour a little bit at a time. I'm gonna try to make kind of like a paste each time I add water, so it's not as viscous. Okay, so we got a little bit of paste going on. I'm gonna add a little bit more water. And warm water is probably going to be better. It's going to absorb into the semolina a lot more efficiently. You don't want it too warm to where you can't use your hands though. Okay, let's continue adding. So while I'm mixing this, I just want to talk a little bit of the difference between an egg dough and a semolina dough. In my experience, I feel that a semolina dough is better used when you're making like almost like hand-shaped pastas. So these are going to be a perfect example of that. I feel that the egg dough is definitely needs to be used for when you're making more of a noodle, like a spaghetti or a fettuccine or any tagliatelle, any kind of like noodle shape is probably best to use an egg dough with that. I still have a little bit of water left, so I'm gonna take what dry semolina I have and kind of mix that in there, and then I'll start getting my hands involved. You can enlist the help of a bench scraper just to kind of help cut in the rest of that dry flour. Okay, now kind of a scoop and fold. So definitely we want to knead this to incorporate all the flour in and keep all that moisture consistent throughout the dough. The more you knead, the less you're going to feel. Well, the more you knead, as well as we're gonna let this rest a little bit too, the less you're gonna feel all those granules of the semolina. Right now it feels a little grainy. What's so interesting about this dough, you take this more coarsely ground flour, and once you mix it in with that water and knead it and let it rest, it becomes so soft and supple. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm just gonna knead it for just a little bit longer. You know, it's feeling a little wet. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more semolina. Okay, let's start with that. You want your pasta dough just to be the right amount of hydration in it, just so when you shape your pasta, it's easier to shape, first off, and it holds that shape. We don't want to shape it and then let it sit to rest and it just kind of falls back into like a glob. We want it to hold its shape, but also be malleable enough to shape. And I've been kneading it for about 5 minutes, so I'm just gonna kind of shape it and then cover it. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes and our dough's been resting. So let's uncover it and see if we can start making these Lorighittas. Nice. Very soft and very malleable. This is great. Okay, so we'll start shaping with this. I'm just gonna get it shaped in a ball again. Okay. Put that off to my corner. I have a cookie sheet all ready to take the made pastas and start drying. I just use, this is actually muslin cloth that I've made into like kitchen towels. So I'm just gonna set them on here. You can also take a baking sheet and just sprinkle flour or semolina on it to help dry it off, but just to save some semolina, I use this thin kitchen towel. So I have that set up to the side. Now I'm just gonna take a little piece off, and then while I'm not working on that dough, I'm gonna keep it covered so it stays moist and doesn't dry out. So I got a little piece and I am going to start rolling it out. Get it nice and thin because, as you'll see, we're gonna wrap this around 2 times and kind of twist it on itself. So it'll be like twice the thickness of whatever we roll out right now. Okay, so I feel like this is a good length. So I'm gonna take the end and I'm gonna wrap it around 3 fingers, and I'm gonna wrap it around 2 times and then pinch the end off with my thumb and then just roll it on around each other, and then just put it on your cookie sheet. And then you just continue on, trying to keep it the same thickness. You want all your pasta to cook the same when it's cooking in the boiling water. So try to keep it to the same thickness. And wrap it a couple times and let it dry. So I usually try to give myself about 2 hours, if not more, for making the dough, letting the dough rest for 30 minutes, shaping the pasta for probably about an hour, and then letting the pasta rest for at least 30 minutes, letting the pasta shapes kind of dry out for 30 minutes, and then throwing it. So that gives you about 2 hours. I only had a little bit left over, so I'm just gonna add it into my next batch that I'm gonna roll out. This is gonna be a little too thick, so I'm gonna cut this in half. Throw that in later. If you wanna make them smaller, you can wrap them around just 2 fingers. Make them a little bit more petite. Like that. Or you can make them a little bit more hearty and go with the 3-finger wrap. All up to you, your choice. That's the beauty about homemade pasta. You do what you like to do. I have some leftover vodka sauce from last week, so I'm gonna be pairing these with the vodka sauce, and it's gonna be delicious. All my Lorighittas have been made and they've been resting. I'm just waiting on my water to boil. It has been salted like the sea. This is the opportunity for you to now season your pasta, so that is why you want to put a good amount of salt in the water. So as soon as this gets up to a boil, I'm gonna throw those Lorighittas in there. Since they are thicker, they are gonna take a little bit more cook time. I would assume maybe around 4 to 6 minutes, but we'll see. So our pasta water is boiling. I am going to collect my fresh pasta. Another reason why I like using the kitchen towels, because I can just kind of put it in there like that. Once I stick it in the water. I'm gonna give it just a gentle stir so they don't stick together initially. As these are boiling, I am reminded to turn down the heat when cooking fresh pasta. You don't want your boiling water to be too aggressive because then it can just tear apart that fresh pasta because it is pretty delicate. So try to boil it at like a medium-high heat and not ruin the pasta that you just spent so much time putting together. Okay, so this has been going for about 3 minutes. They're ready to be pulled and put into the sauce. I'm gonna throw the remainder of the pasta in after this comes up to a boil, which it is coming up to a boil nice and quickly. Okay, let's get the rest of this pasta in there. Boop. Now this is a great opportunity to get some pasta water in here. The pasta water is gonna help thicken up the sauce and really help it adhere. And keep this going at a low heat. Last batch is done being cooked. I'm gonna just bring this over here, a little bit easier to transport. And I put it in the vodka sauce and I'm gonna just let it simmer for a little bit and really come together and cook in these juices. Okay, it is ready. Look at how beautiful that pasta is. Finish it with some grated Parmigiano Reggiano. We'll have to give this a try.